Today, we're digging into this really foundational story of division and redemption. We're going to trace how humanity went from this single group building a tower to the heavens to being scattered all over the earth. And then we'll see how the path back together began with the personal calling of just one man, a man who would literally change the course of history.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll follow this incredible story chronologically through 5 distinct acts. We'll kick things off with the infamous Tower of Babel, move through the call of a man named Abram, see his character tested by both wealth and war, and we'll wrap up with this profound promise that gets sealed under the stars.
All right, so our story really starts with a problem. Genesis chapter 11, it sets the stage for everything that comes next. It explains how humanity got so divided, and it reveals the very beginning of God's huge, ambitious plan to bring them all back together.
So, picture this. We're on the plain of Shinar. All of humanity is together, they're speaking one language, and they have this one shared goal. But really look at their motivation here. Let us make us a name. This isn't about honoring God, it's about building a monument to their own greatness and basically defying the command to go fill the earth.
You can really see this whole thing play out in 4 clear steps. You've got a unified people, driven by pride, who launch this super ambitious project. Well, that prompts some divine intervention, which leads to confused languages and ultimately a divided humanity. In a powerful twist of irony, the very thing they were afraid of, being scattered, is the exact result of their own actions.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. The focus does this dramatic zoom in. The camera pulls way back from the wide shot of all of humanity, and it focuses, like a laser, on one specific family line. We trace 10 generations, from Shem, one of Noah's sons, all the way down to a man named Abram. This right here is the bridge from the universal story to a very particular one.
So the crucial point is that this chapter leaves us hanging. It's a total cliffhanger. Humanity is scattered. God's chosen family line has been identified, but they're in a state of limbo. They're stuck in Haran, only halfway to the promised land. And just to add to the tension, the matriarch of this future nation, Sarai, is barren. Okay, now we get to see the story pivot. After setting up this huge problem of human pride and division, the narrative introduces God's solution. And it all begins with a simple yet profound command to one man. And this slide just perfectly illustrates the immense leap of faith God asks of Abram. Look at the 2 columns. He's told to leave everything that defines who he is, his country, his relatives, his immediate family. And in return, God gives him this 3-part promise: descendants that will become a great nation, a personal legacy, a great name, and a purpose that will end up blessing the entire world. This line right here, this is the heart of the entire promise. It's the mission statement. God's plan to reverse all that scattering and confusion from Babel, it starts right here. He's going to use this one man and the nation that comes from him to be a source of blessing for all the scattered families of the earth.
So Abram obeys, he goes to Canaan, but his faith gets tested immediately. A severe famine hits the land, and instead of trusting God, Abram kind of takes matters into his own hands. He flees to Egypt, and out of fear for his own life, he lies and passes off his wife, Sarai, as his sister. It's a very raw, very human moment of weakness.
And the key takeaway from this is fascinating. Even though Abram completely messes up, God's plan isn't derailed. Not at all. God intervenes, he protects Sarai, and he makes sure his promise stays intact. In fact, Abram leaves Egypt far wealthier than when he arrived. It just goes to show you that the journey of faith isn't about being perfect. It's about continuing to follow even after you stumble. Okay, so now they're back in the land of Canaan. And Abram and his nephew Lot are facing a totally new kind of challenge. It's not a famine, it's not foreign kings, it's the problem of their own immense success. Their wealth, we're talking livestock, silver, gold, it has become so massive that the land just can't support both of their herds anymore. Their employees start fighting over resources, and this conflict inside the family forces a really difficult decision. They have to go their separate ways.
Now, in this incredible act of humility and generosity, Abram, who's the senior partner here, gives Lot the first choice of the land. And this slide just perfectly contrasts their 2 approaches. Lot chooses with his eyes, right? He picks the lush, well-watered Jordan Valley because it looks like Egypt. Abram, on the other hand, acts in faith. He trusts that God's promise applies to whatever land is left over for him.
And guess what happens immediately after Abram's generous, faith-filled act? God shows up. He reconfirms and even expands the promise, tying it directly to the physical land Abram is now standing on and comparing his future offspring to the dust of the earth.
generosity gets rewarded with even greater assurance. Okay, our story now shifts gears, and I mean dramatically. We move from these internal family disputes to large-scale regional warfare. And here, Abram is tested not as a patriarch, but as a military leader and a diplomat. So what happens is this powerful coalition of 4 kings from the east, think modern-day Iran and Iraq, they invade Canaan to squash a rebellion by 5 local city-state kings, including the king of Sodom, which is where Lot now lives. The eastern kings win, and they haul off all the wealth of Sodom, and Lot right along with it.
When Abram hears his nephew has been captured, he does not hesitate. He's not just a shepherd anymore, he's a chieftain. He arms his 318 trained men, all born in his own household, and he launches this daring night raid. And in a stunning upset, he defeats the 4 victorious armies and rescues Lot, his family, and all their possessions. Now, on his victorious return, Abram's leadership is tested again. First, he's met by the king of Sodom, who offers him all the spoils of war. But then he's met by this mysterious and really significant figure, Melchizedek, the king of Salem, which was likely ancient Jerusalem. And he's called a priest of the Most High God. Melchizedek blesses Abram, and in a profound act of faith, Abram gives him a tenth of everything, acknowledging a spiritual authority higher than any earthly king.
And this brings us to our final chapter. Because despite his incredible wealth, his military victory, and the respect of kings, this chapter reveals Abram's deepest, most persistent anxiety.
Abram is just direct and honest with God here. He basically asks, what good is all this success when I'm still childless? In its culture, having no son meant you had no future, no legacy. He points out the reality of his situation. His heir isn't his own son, it's a servant. From where he's standing, the promise of a great nation looks impossible.
God's response is so powerful. He doesn't just give a verbal reassurance. He gives Abram this stunning visual one. He takes him outside and tells him, go on, try and count the stars. And just as that is an impossible task, so too will it be impossible to number his descendants.
And right here, we get one of the most foundational statements in the entire book. Faced with the impossibility of a situation, his old age, Sarai's barrenness, Abram chooses to believe God's promise. And that act of faith, that trust in God's word over his own circumstances, is credited to him as righteousness.
The chapter ends with God formalizing this promise in a mysterious and really solemn covenant ceremony. And it leaves us with a central question that echoes from Abram's story right into our own lives. When our circumstances seem impossible, how do we choose to believe in a promise we can't yet see?